What happens when genius gets ahead of its audience? The 1960s gave us space voyages, time portals, and mind-bending technology that TV audiences barely knew how to process. But just as these shows began to change the rules, studios hit the brakes. Why? Budget panic, creative clashes, or simple misunderstanding of brilliance. Across dusty archives and rerun legends lie stories of imagination cut short. These are the 12 sci-fi series of the 1960s that flew too close to the stars before crashing too soon. Number 12, UFO, 1969-1970. Before Star Wars made space warfare cool, UFO asked a darker question. What if Earth had already been invaded, and the war was being fought in secret? Created by Jerry Anderson, the mastermind behind Thunderbirds, UFO premiered at the tail end of the 1960s and looked nothing like anything else on television. It followed Shadow, a covert organization operating beneath a movie studio, battling alien forces that kidnapped humans for mysterious experiments. Visually, UFO was stunning, sleek silver uniforms, lavender-haired women piloting moon bases, and a mix of spy thriller tension with cosmic horror. It wasn't camp, it was cool, cold, and unsettling. But that tone also confused audiences expecting lighthearted adventure. The series tackled moral gray zones, sacrifice, loyalty, and paranoia at a time when viewers still wanted escapism. Production costs ballooned, and the network grew nervous. Only one season aired, leaving dozens of storylines unresolved. Yet decades later, UFO gained cult status for its ambition. It predicted how sci-fi would evolve serious, cinematic, and emotionally complex. Canceled too soon? Absolutely. UFO wasn't just ahead of its time, it was orbiting somewhere the audience hadn't reached yet. Number 11, The Champions, 1968-1969. Imagine James Bond meets the X-Men that was The Champions, a British spy series with a sci-fi twist. 3 secret agents survive a plane crash in the Himalayas, only to be rescued by an ancient civilization that grants them superhuman abilities, telepathy, enhanced strength, and lightning-fast reflexes. When they return to their organization, they hide their powers while fighting global threats. The premise was perfect for the Cold War era, a mix of espionage, mysticism, and futuristic fantasy. The cast Stuart Damon, Alexandra Bastedo, and William Gaunt brought charm and chemistry, while the production leaned on sleek European locations that made every mission feel cinematic. The special effects were modest but clever, giving just enough wonder without stretching belief. So, why did it end so soon? Timing. It launched just as The Avengers and Mission Impossible dominated the screen, leaving the Champions in the shadow of bigger franchises. Despite solid ratings, the studio canceled it after 1 season, citing budget and limited international traction. Still, its influence lingers in every super agent story that followed. Canceled too soon? Completely. The Champions showed that the line between spycraft and science fiction could be razor-thin and thrilling. Number 10, Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, 1967-1968. When you think puppet shows, you probably imagine kids' stuff. Captain Scarlet was anything but. Another creation of Jerry Anderson, it told of a war between Earth and the invisible Mysterons from Mars. The twist, the hero himself. Captain Scarlet was killed and resurrected by alien technology, becoming virtually indestructible. That concept was bold, even morbid for its time. With detailed miniatures, moody lighting, and surprisingly mature writing, Captain Scarlet turned Anderson's supermarionation technique into serious storytelling. The tone was darker than Thunderbird's episodes explored sacrifice, revenge, and the cost of endless conflict. Despite rave reviews from older teens and adults, networks worried that its tone was too grim for family viewing. Merchandise slowed, and production ended after 1 season. Yet fans still marvel at its ambition, the gritty atmosphere, the melancholy music, the strange realism in puppet faces that seem to feel pain. Canceled too soon? Definitely, Captain Scarlet was the moment 60s sci-fi grew up, and television didn't know what to do with that. Number 9, The Prisoner, 1967-1968. There's never been another show like The Prisoner, and there probably never will be. Created by and starring Patrick McGoohan, it told the story of a government agent who resigns without explanation, is kidnapped, and wakes up in The Village, a sunny, surreal prison, where everyone is known only by a number. Every episode was a psychological chess match between free will and control. The Prisoner wasn't just science fiction, it was philosophy disguised as mystery. The pastel houses, the omnipresent cameras, and the eerie balloon-like enforcer known as Rover created an atmosphere that was both whimsical and terrifying. But McGoohan's obsession with creative control clashed with producers and viewers alike. The finale, famously cryptic, left audiences baffled. Still, its questions about identity, surveillance, and autonomy feel more relevant now than ever. It only lasted 17 episodes, but each one pushed television storytelling forward by light years. Canceled too soon? Maybe it wasn't canceled, it just escaped the boundaries of what TV could be. Number 8. The Jetsons, 1962-1963. If the Flintstones looked backward to the Stone Age, the Jetsons looked ahead to flying cars, robot maids, and video calls decades before they became real. Created by Hanna-Barbera, the show followed George Jetson and his family living in Orbit City, a futuristic parody of suburban America. It was optimistic, colorful, and filled with clever gadgets that predicted real-world inventions. Yet, for all its futuristic charm, the Jetsons crashed after just one season. Why? It aired in prime time, competing with live-action shows that adults preferred. Ratings sputtered, and it was shelved. Ironically, reruns in the 1980s turned it into a classic. What was once considered too childish for grown-ups became a nostalgic symbol of retro-futurism. It wasn't satire, it was prophecy. The Jetsons predicted video conferencing, smartwatches, and home automation with uncanny accuracy. Canceled too soon? No doubt. The future it imagined arrived eventually, but by then, the Jetsons were already part of history. Number 7. Journey to the Unknown, 1968-1969. What if every episode felt like stepping into a new nightmare you couldn't explain? That was Journey to the Unknown, a British-American anthology that mixed mystery, horror, and futuristic paranoia. Produced by Hammer Film Productions, the same studio that made Gothic classics, it aimed to bring cinematic chills to television screens. Each story stood alone, ordinary people facing eerie, sometimes supernatural forces that hinted at technology gone wrong or unseen worlds bleeding into ours. It wasn't flashy, but it was atmospheric. The cinematography carried that hazy, dreamlike quality you couldn't shake. Guest stars like Roddy McDowall and Joan Collins added movie-level polish, while the scripts tapped into late 60s unease surveillance, lost identity, and social control. It wasn't about jump scares, it was about dread, the slow kind that makes you glance over your shoulder. Sadly, audiences weren't ready for that slow burn style. The show struggled against lighter sci-fi like Lost in Space. Executives wanted clear heroes and villains, not ambiguity and moral fog. After one season, it vanished quietly from schedules. But its DNA survived later anthologies like Night Gallery, and the Twilight Zone revival borrowed its tone of intellectual fear. Canceled too soon? Absolutely. Journey to the Unknown proved that science fiction could be haunting without showing a single alien. Number 6. A for Andromeda, 1961-1962. Before AI was a buzzword, A for Andromeda dared to ask, what happens when humanity creates intelligence it can't control? This British miniseries began with scientists receiving a coded message from space, a blueprint, to build a powerful computer that, once completed, constructs a human-like being named Andromeda. It wasn't an invasion story, it was about hubris, fear, and the consequences of playing God. Shot with eerie minimalism, its sets were cold, metallic, and sterile, mirroring the alien detachment of its premise. The performances, particularly by Julie Christie in one of her earliest roles, gave it depth beyond its modest budget. It was speculative science grounded in emotion, showing how mankind's thirst for knowledge could spiral into moral collapse. But like many BBC productions of the era, most of A for Andromeda was wiped, leaving only fragments behind. What survived still feels prophetic, its themes echoing in films like Ex Machina and Her. The show ended after one follow-up series due to costs and preservation issues, not lack of brilliance. Canceled too soon? Unquestionably. It wasn't just science fiction, it was science warning. Number 5. My Favorite Martian, 1963-1966. Not every sci-fi gem had to be brooding and serious. My Favorite Martian turned the idea of alien contact into pure comic chaos. When mild-mannered reporter Tim O'Hara discovers a crashed Martian played with deadpan perfection by Ray Walston, he decides to keep him hidden while learning about his bizarre gadgets and telepathic tricks. It was witty, warm, and filled with visual inventiveness. The Martian's antenna could retract with a simple gesture, and his invisible powers turned ordinary suburban life into slapstick wonder. Beneath the laughs, though, the show subtly explored tolerance, curiosity, and what it meant to be human. It balanced humor with genuine affection for its characters, a rarity for sitcoms of that time. Ratings soared for 2 seasons, but slipped in the third. Viewers' tastes were shifting toward more colorful, outlandish fare, like Batman and Bewitched. CBS pulled the plug before the show could wrap up its ongoing stories, yet its legacy lived on through reruns, comics, and even a 90s movie remake. Canceled too soon? Yes. My Favorite Martian made science fiction fun, human, and just weird enough to stick in the cultural orbit forever. Number 4. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. 1964-1968. Before Mission. Impossible took over spy television. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. mixed espionage with futuristic tech and Cold War cool. It followed suave agent Napoleon Solo and his Russian partner Ilya Kuryakin as they battled global threats from the mysterious Thrush organization. Think tuxedos, gadgets, and globe-trotting missions sprinkled with tongue-in-cheek charm. What set it apart was its tone slick but self-aware. It winked at the audience without losing its edge. The chemistry between Robert Vaughn and David McCallum made the show magnetic, and its sci-fi touches, laser weapons, mind control, and secret laboratories gave it an imaginative twist that kept it from being just another spy show. By its 4th season, though, network meddling diluted its identity. First too campy, then too grim, it couldn't find balance. Viewers drifted, and it was abruptly canceled. Ironically, just as global espionage thrillers were booming, U.N.C.L.E. was gone. Canceled too soon? Completely. It paved the way for modern franchises that still borrow its mix of style, sarcasm, and spycraft. Number 3. Planet of the Apes, 1974. Technically a 70s show, but its soul was pure 60s science fiction, thoughtful, daring, and way ahead of its audience. Based on the hit film, Planet of the Apes followed 2 astronauts stranded on a world where evolved apes ruled and humans were enslaved. Every episode played like an allegory about prejudice, fear, and survival in an upside-down world. The makeup effects were groundbreaking for television, and Roddy McDowall returned to lend gravitas to the ape civilization. The show dared to be philosophical episodes, tackled questions about equality, war, and moral blindness. Unfortunately, it was also expensive, and CBS panicked when ratings dipped early. Only 14 episodes aired before cancellation. Still, those episodes left a massive footprint. Later reboots, comics, and films all borrowed its ideas and tone. It was serious science fiction that respected its audience. And that's rare. Canceled too soon? No doubt. Planet of the Apes may have been short-lived, but its echoes are still heard in every dystopian story that came after. Number 2. Quatermass and the Pit, 1958-1959, revived through the 60s. Before Doctor Who conquered British science fiction, there was Quatermass. And its boldest chapter, Quatermass and the Pit, remains a masterclass in how to terrify an audience with ideas rather than monsters. The story begins with a mysterious object unearthed beneath London Part spaceship, Part Tomb, and what it awakens isn't an alien invasion, but humanity's buried memory. Nigel Kneale's writing was decades ahead of its time. Instead of relying on cheap spectacle, he turned science fiction into social horror, exploring evolution, fear, and the possibility that our violent instincts came from alien influence. That concept, aliens as creators of humanity, was pure dynamite for television in the late 1950s, but its reruns and film adaptation throughout the 60s made it feel more modern than ever. Despite critical acclaim, the BBC moved on. Production costs, scheduling issues, and the rise of lighter entertainment sidelined Kneale's intellectual storytelling. Still, its influence is staggering. You can trace its DNA through Doctor Who, The X-Files, and even 2001, A Space Odyssey. Canceled too soon? Beyond question. Quatermass and the Pit didn't just predict where sci-fi would go, it built the map. Number 1. The Starlost. Pilot filmed 1969, broadcast 1973. Sometimes the greatest 60s show didn't even get the chance to be one. The Starlost was conceived in the late 1960s as an epic Canadian-American series about the survivors of a doomed Earth traveling through space aboard a massive generation ship. Its creator, Harlan Ellison, envisioned something profound, a story about culture, isolation, and humanity's last hope among the stars. But by the time it reached television, everything had gone wrong. Budgets were slashed, scripts rewritten, and the visionary Ellison walked away in frustration. What remained still shimmered with potential. Each episode followed different domes, self-contained societies unaware they were aboard a drifting ark. The themes were rich: forgotten history, decaying civilizations, and mankind's stubborn refusal to unite. Though technically aired in the early 70s, its aesthetics and ideas were pure 60s idealism mixed with paranoia. The studio system wasn't ready to fund ambitious serialized sci-fi. It lasted barely one season before fading into legend. Cancelled too soon? Absolutely. The Starlost might be remembered as a cautionary tale, but in spirit, it was the ultimate 60s dream visionary, flawed and defiantly human. So, there you have it, 12 daring shows that Imagine Futures television wasn't ready for. Some made us laugh, others made us think, but all proved the 1960s were about dreaming beyond limits. They burned bright, vanished fast, and left echoes that still inspire sci-fi today. Which one would you revive, if given the chance? Share your pick in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more lost worlds from television's golden age of imagination.